Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kira Epstein, the co-director at the New School at Commonweal. Today, we are delighted to welcome Sofia Nemenmann and Anabella Museri to the New School in the third of our three-part series introducing Commonweal's Omega Resilience Awards program partners. I'll turn this over to my co-director and our host, Michael Lerner, in a minute. But for those of you who haven't been with us before, the New School at Commonweal is a learning community of dialogue and conversation. We explore ways to build resilience and better stewardship for our bodies, souls, community, and the earth. We produce our conversations and make them available for thousands of listeners worldwide on YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. We've been doing this since 2007, and we have more than 400 podcasts available, including many other resilience-focused conversations. If you missed the first two conversations in this series, they're already on our website and media channels now. Thanks so much to our audio engineer, Ken Adams, who's behind the scenes and does our production work. So welcome to you, Anna and Sofia. And now over to you, Michael Lerner, Commonweal's president and our host for today's conversation.
Thank you, Kira. And I joined Kira in her welcomes to Sofia and Anabella. And also I want to mention Diana Rosenfeld, who's a very gifted translator who will be facilitating this conversation. Sofia and Anabella actually are very fluent in English, but the translation enables them to speak from the heart in their native tongue. And so we have provided that today for everyone. So again, Sofia and Anabella, welcome.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much for this warm welcome, for the invitation. We are very grateful to take part in this conversation and to talk with you, someone we truly admire. And fortunately, we have been working with you for a long time. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anabella, any thoughts?
No, muy contenta.
I'm so glad to be here.
So let's start, for listeners who don't know, with just a brief introduction to what the Omega Resilience Awards are. Some years ago, we imagined finding authentic partners in Latin America, Africa, and India to raise up the voices of younger leaders in what is called the Global South, who are asking themselves how we live in these extraordinary times that some people call the polycrisis, or the meta-crisis, or the great unraveling, or the great turning, or the perma-crisis, or simply cascading crises. But whatever we call them, the simple fact is that rapid change is taking place all over the world, including social, environmental, technological, financial, economic, and indeed natural changes. And these are creating both immense problems and authentic opportunities to respond in creative and resilient ways. So we were so grateful to be introduced by our friend Tom Cruise at the Rockefeller Brothers Fund to AADAA, also known as CAHE. And so we're so glad to be talking with you both. So Rather than trying to describe Kahe myself, let me start with Sofia and ask you to give us a sense of your extraordinary work with Kahe.
Bueno, muchas gracias nuevamente.
Thank you again. I want to thank Tom Cruise again because thanks to him, we've been connected. This is an awesome project and we truly enjoy doing it. We truly believe in this project. CAGE is a space that was created with the Argentine Environmental Lawyers Association with the aim to have an interdisciplinary space of work that tries to find as a response to this public crisis you are talking about, not only to react against this extractivist movement along Argentina, but also to have an agenda of proposals with public policies, economic policies, social response, and in that direction within the framework of ORA's awards. There is also a connection related to bonds, the system of beliefs, the narrative within our answer, but it's also a way to create new answers to this crisis. So the creation of CAGE is within the framework. Well, actually the ADA is turning 20 this year, and CAGE is just 2.5 years working within the association. And our quest is in that direction, is to support communities and different assemblies that are fighting to protect their own territories, their cosmovision, their lifestyles as a whole, in a way to support them and at the same time to create new ways of doing things. And we've been working on that for several times, and that is the framework of the regional fellowship, the ORA fellowships we will talk about in depth.
Thank you, Sofia. That's very beautiful description. Sofia, let me just introduce you a bit now. You are a co-director of AADAA, CAGE, and an advisor for Argentina at Global Green Grants, which incidentally I served as chair of the board for a time, and it's a wonderful organization. And you're also a documentary filmmaker, and I believe you lead treks as well in your region. So your region is exquisitely beautiful part of Argentina. And you started your work defending the freedom of rivers by founding Rio Santa Cruz Sin Represas, which is a very beautiful river. And you were opposing 2 large hydroelectric dams on the last free-flowing river in Argentine Patagonia. So anyway, we're honored by this. I also want to mention, and we'll get into this, that you are an astrologer, and you share an interest in the political spiritual connection through workshops and talks. So we'll get to that. Anabella, I've had the great pleasure of knowing you in person, and you've worked in human rights for 15 years. You started with issues related to prison reform, which is dear to our hearts at Commonweal. We've worked a lot on youth prisons and actually also on end-of-life care for prisoners in the California prison system. But you expanded into environmental issues, gender issues, childhood issues, and economic and social and cultural rights. So you approach these with a combination of research and project implementation skills with an emphasis on the synergistic intersection of this work with the arts. And you also help other organizations with organizational development. So, Anabella, what would you add to what Sofia has said about your experience working with the Omega Resilience Awards project?
Bueno, gracias de
Thanks
nuevo por la
again for
presentación y
this
también
warm
la
presentation
oportunidad.
and for the opportunity to
A
be
mí
here.
esta
I would like to say that
junto con Sofi
Sofia and I
coordinamos el trabajo
coordinate
del proyecto,
all the
todo el
work related
funcionamiento
to
del
the
proyecto ya hace
project.
2
We've been doing
años.
so for 2
Tenemos
years.
esta hermosa
We
oportunidad
have this great
de
opportunity
trabajar en
to
red
work
con,
within
con
a
reconocido
network.
Commonweal,
We have had the
trabajar
pleasure of having met you in Commonweal, to work with different organizations that are connected to this project. For us, I can speak on our behalf. I think that we both share this feeling that is a before and after this experience, mainly the possibility of having known Commonweal and to understand this intersection between individual and collective work within collective and individual healing, and the fact that there is an organization dealing with that looks for this type of synergy and connection. Again, there was a before and after for the two of us, because this is a journey we've been going through in an experimental way as two separate ways. We have advocacy, activism, the search to transform the environment, to reduce violence within society, to foster empathy, and try to raise awareness about this violence that you see in different domains. And at the same time, we have our individual work. In my own case, with singing bowls, the spiritual journeys, as if they were two separate roads. But after getting to know about Commonweal and about the Aura Fellowship, there is a confirmation that we cannot be without the other. It's the same thing. And this is the opportunity that we also have to talk about these terms in a more fluent way, more connected in a way. This is what I would like to add to Sofia's reflections. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anabella. Sofia, coming back to you, I mentioned your work as an astrologer. And you know, I'm fascinated by astrology. I'm fascinated by the power of symbolic systems that don't make any sense from a materialist scientific worldview, but in fact have an immense capacity to open us to what we might call superconscious domains of the human spirit and also the human soul. So I'm curious, you know, we're clearly living in a period of extraordinary revolutionary change around the world. And I have astrologer friends who have talked to me at length about how they understand the astrology of this period of time. But I understand it to be very potent. So I wonder if you could place us as you see the world and see your country and see your work in the context of what the stars have to tell us.
Yo la verdad es que agradezco que
I
lo
think that
hagas porque
you
de alguna manera
raised
creo
this
que
topic
cuando se nos convoca a
because
hablar
we
de nuestros
are
espacios de trabajo
someone to talk
profundamente
about
atravesados
these
por el
work-related
contexto político y
issues
sobre
that
todo
are
también por el
highly
contexto en el que estamos
affected
hoy
by
en
the political
Argentina,
situation, mainly in
que es bien
Argentina,
crítico.
which is a quite
Entonces, en general,
difficult
no
current
se
political
no se
situation.
incluyen
So
estas otras
we don't
visiones,
start
otros
talking
modos
about
de
these new
entender la realidad y
approaches
lo que está
to deal with
pasando.
reality.
Y
And
yo
I
creo que
believe
al
that
contrario, parte de alguna
that in
manera
a
el
way
cambio
change. The change we're being forced to, but at the same time we're forced to adopt. So we have to think about the world, be part of the world in a different way. I believe that astrology in that regard gives us a new tool, a new language, because it's a language to understand from a different standpoint, to change the way we interpret this crisis. And at the same time, this provides you the opportunity to connect with that in a different way. So astrology is a healing tool in the sense that it allows me to lower these morality standards when you decide whether this is right or wrong, the inside and the outside worlds. So to change this view that what you see outside is not mine, what is inside is mine. So we have this separation in theoretical terms, but when you think about astrology, you think that what you see up is down, when you see outside is the same you see inside. So that is my view in a way, is to try to go beyond the limits, the limits of the things that you see in the world that you don't like. So in a way, the proposal is to analyze our capacity to change the things we see in the world and we don't like. Take it into consideration that we are part of that as well. We have light and shadows, so we also have part of that violence since we are scared of, and that need for destruction, or maybe that anger, that pain. So I think it's one of the most powerful tools in terms of astrology, goes into that direction. And I also understand that there are more and more people getting into that because people need more tools to try to see the world from a different perspective. So again, I come back to what I said at the very beginning. I'm so grateful that you brought this up, because within this context, we have political voices, the one we hear in mainstream media. Those are our political references, which are full of violence, and at the same time create distance and detachment, but bring about pain as well. So whenever we have tools that we have close at hands to change that dynamics, to have a direct impact on the things that are taking place at a national, global, even planetary levels, are quite valuable within this context.
I find that beautiful. You know, the great psychoanalyst Carl Jung said that astrology contained the sum total of the psychological wisdom of the ancients. And I think that that's true. And the ancients had immense psychological wisdom. They believed, for the most part, that consciousness was not an epiphenomenon of the human brain, but rather that we lived in a living universe and a living world, and that the stars and planets were speaking to us, and they understood them in the same way they understood the gods and the ability of nature to speak to us. So it seems to me that we may be on the verge as a species of recovering an ancient wisdom, which you can call panpsychism, meaning the ubiquity of consciousness in the universe, or you can call it pantheism, meaning that the universe is alive with gods. Whatever symbolic system you choose, I think we're on the verge of a very potent shift in consciousness at a global level. And I think astrology is one of the very powerful teaching methods for recovering it. So, Anabella, that leads naturally to you and your work with Tibetan bells and with healing modalities. When you think about how you and others you know are living through this perilous and difficult time in Argentina. What do you discover that the healing methods that you use bring to you? And in that context, I understand you have a spiritual teacher. What is your teacher saying about these times?
Gracias, Michael. Yo trabajo
Thank you, Michael. I work with, I am being trained in the singing pan-Tibetan bowls, that is with a system called Sound Touch. And I have been taking place in different experiences connected to what you just said regarding the this wisdom from our ancestors. So it was more like spiritual experiences. So in a way, that was what has allowed me to create a bridge to connect with nature, in my case in particular. And there is a lot of spiritual work behind regarding Tibetan singing bowls. These singing bowls, have vibrations and sounds with a special frequency that represents the same order in nature, the distance between those sounds in harmony. They reproduce like the same geometry, that sacred geometry that you see in nature. So these bowls, when you work with these healing groups or individual groups, is a reminder of that order for the body, and the different bodies can come back to that order, because sometimes we get lost due to external circumstances. In this case in particular, the opportunity to carry the bowls when I work with organizations in CAGE, we have also had the opportunity to sit around these bowls together with healing circles that we got to know through Commonweal, to create spaces when we get together to work about joint strategic work or planning. We first start our work with this inner connection to create this collective order, and then start thinking, so to try to get together through that collective space, and from there on to start our working day. That is very special for us, and it's beautiful to see that there are more people willing to take part in that, because at the very beginning it was kind of weird. You think about people in politics, in law, or even in advocacy. There are things that seem to be even more important. And then it's like, okay, these people started to sit with that, to connect with themselves, to be with others, to listen to the bowl, to slow down a little bit. I think that this question of the poly crisis is even harder to slow down at an individual level, collective level. So we have this current situation. So this is a moment to slow down, to connect with yourself and with the others. From that inner connection, to connect with others, plan work, and then you can see the result of that. There is a question connected to individual healing, which is connected to the soul desire to align with our own individual purpose. And that is what we also do at a collective level when we are thinking about the purpose and the mission of an organization, their goals, the goals of a project in particular. So the bowls and this connection space of silence is a good place to generate support, trust, and it's a place to take care of one another. and it allows us to reach our best version, kind of in that direction.
Yes, I love that point about the soul seeking to align itself with our life purpose and with the life purposes of others. And I have such respect for work with Tibetan bowls. We use them at Commonweal. I have a close friend, Deborah Koff-Chapin, who works extensively with Tibetan bowls. And often when I give talks, she does work with Tibetan bowls at the introduction, simply to drop everybody into a much deeper place from which to hear and to reflect. So it's so fascinating that both with astrology and with the healing modalities, including Tibetan bowls that you work with, that we find these great systems of sound and symbol, and also the arts, which you work with, and how all of these enable us to encounter these times from a far more profound level in ourselves, and to access insights and indeed inner powers to enable us to move more skillfully. I think one of the things that is really intriguing about astrology and healing work is that it cuts across political divisions. You know, you can have people on both sides of any political debate who will nonetheless come together around healing or around astrology. I know at Commonweal, in our cancer help programs, we've done 222 week-long cancer help programs, which I've co-led. And we have people from right across the entire political spectrum. And they come together because we all need to heal. And these common languages of healing and astrology and other symbolic systems cut across all our division. So I just think that's a beautiful aspect of them. So Sofia, let's turn to your experience to date with now, as I understand, two sets of Aura Fellows. What have you learned from the experience of selecting these fellows, meeting with them, talking with them, supporting them? What has been the surprise for you, really?
¿Qué pregunta?
What a question. It is so hard to mention one thing. I would try to be brief. I will start by saying that I have this necklace, a gift from Rosalia, a fellow from Ecuador, from the Schwartz community in the Amazons. She gave it to me in the first on-site meeting in Buenos Aires. Anabella and Susan have the same necklace, so we have this as a souvenir through this craft from her community, among so many other things. And I also want to talk about this because it's connected to our conversation. That is something that is very important, is hope. It's a word we haven't mentioned so far, because I guess that these fellows bring us this sense of quietness, peace, due to the fact that there are other people doing the same things in the same line, with similar convictions, with strong will, with great effort. And so we have like a peace of mind. That happens to me, that sometimes I say, this crisis is affecting the entire world, all the countries, all over their territories, and that can be quite overwhelming. And it's so tiring. I mean, it's like it's so overwhelming because that is taking place everywhere, not only here. And the fact that you are in touch with people that are trying to protect their territories, their lifestyle with this high level of love, which was one of the main traits in the first group of fellows, Aura fellows. And I guess that this gives peace of mind, certain that there are other people all over the world that are trying to doing their best to support the same network. And I'm so sure about this. I am so convinced about the first cohort, because we had the opportunity to get to know them, to meet them in person, to hug them. Latin Americans are very fond of hugging. We need hugging. So our relationship changed significantly after we met. And I am looking forward to having the same type of connection with a new cohort, with very powerful projects, with very different type of teams, different perspectives, social advocacy, urban activism, arts, or from the Amazon or in cities. So I kind of have the same type of expectations about these new fellows. Of course, we will share more about them. We have just started. Tomorrow, we are having the first meeting with all the fellows, the new cohort. We have great expectation about tomorrow's meeting. But what I can tell you that this is hopeful to share with a group of people that have a team, that are part of a community. There is something there that generates peace of mind.
That's beautiful. You know, staying with you, Sofia, for a moment, you describe yourself as an ecofeminist, which is a beautiful description. I'm reminded of the great Hindu philosopher Sri Aurobindo. And he once said, the future, if there is to be a future, must wear a crown of feminine design. The future, if there is to be a future, must wear a crown of feminine design. And you know, I have honestly come to the conclusion that the world would be somewhat better off if it were run by women rather than men. I just think women, for all their humanity, are better equipped to take us through this very difficult period of time. So I'm just curious, as an ecofeminist, what does it mean to you to do your work and live as an ecofeminist?
Personalmente lo vivo
At a personal level, I think it's an everyday lifestyle. I take care of the fact that those political, theoretical concepts are not far from my daily life. This ideology with ecofeminism and the connection with nature and women have a lot of similarities, and also the role of women within the system of care, from the deepest idea of care. Women are the leaders connected to the movements related to the environment. And I don't think that just happens by chance. And I think this is connected with this analogy, this bond between nature and the women. I don't think it's by chance. I think it's part of this codependence, coexistence as man, as one more species within biodiversity. So if we have this perspective, in a way, this has been generated by the ecofeminist movement. And I am so convinced about this interconnection. I live in a city which is very near the forest, very near the Andean mountain range, and I cannot be detached from that because I do understand all the things that the ecosystem provides. Again, this understanding that we are codependent, interdependent with it, this life thread, we are not above or below, we are all at the same level, we are all part of the same network. This is the way of life regarding of advocacy. Of course, at the personal level, I do it through advocacy because I feel the need to communicate. I feel the need to disseminate all this. But beyond advocacy and activism, it is an everyday challenge to try to understand that we are all part. We have this idea that we are part of nature. I heard a phrase that was connected to the fact that women did not vote, and voting was not enough. It has to be part of the decision maker groups. And in a way, this is what is happening with the environment, because the environmental rights are also expanding, not only here, but all over the world. In a way, it's kind of following the same steps that ecofeminists followed. It's not enough to defend ecosystems as natural resources. We need to understand that ecosystems are part of decision making because we need them.
Thank you for that. Anabella, we've talked about the first cohort of your fellows having completed and the new cohort coming in. Can you give us one example from the first cohort of fellows of a person who particularly deeply touched your own heart and particularly deeply you just felt a real connection with?
Todavía estamos conociéndolos de a poquito.
We are still getting to know the people from the second cohort. I can give you an overall things about the new project presented. There is one in particular that is connected to the combination of experiences within different disciplines to work around polycrisis issues and protection of the environment. I think, again, this is what we've been talking about, is to go beyond this binary approach. When we talked about the spiritual and the political, this is the environment against the human. So we have a more comprehensive view of the world in terms of gender issues. And this project we start working with, and I find great resonance with that one in particular, as well as some other projects related to communication. There's a strong emphasis in general for this second cohort. There's a great focus on communication, several projects in terms of working with women and young generations, working with children, with women, leading women seems to be like there is a lot of light connected to that. That light we have to keep on working that and to use that as a base within that context. I want to come back to this ancestor. There were several projects related to the ancestors' wisdom to come back to them, to get back to them in the sense that we should integrate them, in the sense that they continue developing. And there are several communities that are still protecting that wisdom and using that wisdom for expansion. This idea of integration is what I value the most, and is one of the great challenges. And I think that in the first cohort and the second cohort in the general project, I think that the main focus is integration from different perspectives applied to different domains is the core point, is a pillar. And I would also like to talk about the first cohort, but at the same time with the second cohort, the first virtual meeting that we have already had, there is this idea of trust. When you meet a friend from childhood, a friend you haven't seen for a long time, and it seems as if you have been in touch forever because you connect immediately. There is no need to go even in depth. It's something that already happens, and something that happened with the first cohort, and even more when we met in person. We had this feeling that there was something around us all, connecting us all, protecting us all, and that was deeply moving for all the people being there. And that type of lighting is already felt in the second cohort. Actually, I felt that in the first meeting that we had with the second cohort, the feeling that we can speak from a connection perspective, humanity without much protocol. From a genuine standpoint, there is connection, there is communication among us all. Well, that is what I wanted to share about the cohort and the new cohort that has just started.
Sofia, I wanted to ask you, since you're a co-founder of AA and obviously deeply engaged with CAHE, what has been the impact in terms of your evolution of your work as a whole of this project? In other words, has it been useful to you in extending or expanding your sense of what's possible for you as an organization or community? Or does it simply stand alongside other things but doesn't affect the organization itself very much?
Espero haber entendido bien la pregunta.
I hope I understood the question well. On the one hand, I believe that the work of the association today in Argentina has a huge importance, because what we are doing is to support those who in a way have to fight again these environmental fights, the hardest in the countries. They are all projects that take a lot of energy, but at the same time, they are all necessary. So in that regard, the creation of CAGE and having this new perspective that I've been talking about within the association have generated an organic, natural process of expansion within the team, because you have a new perspective within one space. There's a need for new voices, new people, new leading references, for these new narratives, for these new methods. So in a way, the creation of CAGE at a personal level, and I guess for all the people in CAGE, I believe that this is a great challenge, because it is also a place where we can channel all is concerned, but at the same time, it provides a place for healing at an individual and collective level. I don't know if I got the question right. Sí, entendiste la pregunta perfectamente. Muchas gracias. Respondiste muy bien.
As we begin to move toward the completion of this conversation, something both of you spoke of in our preparatory conversation was that you felt that your work had a lot to offer in these chaotic, difficult times. And that part of that was really providing some kind of beacon of hope through your work, and perhaps particularly through the Aura Fellows work. Anabella, could you speak to that? And what did you mean by how the fellows could help provide a beacon of hope?
Creo que se me aparece.
When you ask me this, I think about different traits of the different fellows, mainly from the first cohort. Their sensitivity. When I talked about that, I mean, I get deeply moved immediately because this is a reminder of a lot of things. I remember them talking about this environmental crisis, their empathy, their spiritual capacity, their capacity to put into words from a poetic perspective the situation we are going through. We also need poetry in order to assimilate and incorporate the current situation we are going through, and that immediate change is mandatory. We need a change right now. So in a way, I believe they can provide sensitivity, poetry, action, people that are face to face with reality, in contact with their territory, with their community, defending rivers, territories, different type of ecosystems, and also with a more creative aspect, this capacity to communicate, to disseminate their information, because I think this is connected to Aura's project. Because you clearly saw this view to communicate for action. You have an emphasis, a focus on projects related to the capacity of communicating polycrisis and develop resilience without paralysis, without pain, regardless of the difficult situation. And we might choose to go that way, but I guess the fellows and all the communities they are represented, the wisdoms they represent. I'm sorry for the cough. I think that they can make a great contributions by becoming like a bridge with this chaos, this sense of need, violent situation at different levels. We, man, different species, environment, so they can become a bridge. And the possibility for action, connection, creation, integration. I think that is what comes to mind. And at the same time, I have the picture of a rainbow, but mainly this idea of a bridge and to go through the transition from the small to the big, from connection through empathy, through new words and creations, and new tools. And again, this reminds me of Lamachi, Visharai, One of the fellows from last year, her story was quite moving. When we listened to her presentation, we all felt deeply moved. This greatness that she had. But that very same feeling seems to be present in all the fellows we shared with. We have a great admiration for the great work they do, the way they manage to put those things into words, the way they build together with other people, and at the same time to develop a network. We have a great sense of community. And I think that is one of the main pillars of this project. If we take some distance, we have been talking about the regional aspect, and we talked about Latin America. In Latin America, when all the fellows are together from the three regions, you can see beacons of lights all over the territories because, as Sophie said, there are people working from the spiritual way with similar strategy, with similar concepts, without being agreed upon in advance. And so we have a common purpose, and we have this collective construction. The people behind Ora's project, people, fellows can contribute to that, this collective construction.
Thank you, Anabella. Sofia, what have you seen? I mean, you are an advisor to Global Green Grants, which I esteem highly, having served as board chair for, I think, 2 terms. And I know how powerful those small grants are that Global Green Grants makes to frontline activists. What do you think the impact has been on the fellows of receiving these fellowships? What have you seen them reporting about the impact the fellowship itself has had on their own work and their own sense of participation?
Sí, bueno, la verdad es que
Well, actually, it's very similar. I mean, the type of work carried out by both organizations. That's why I was checking which organization you were referring to. But the fact is that Ora's project, there's been a special attention to projects that might not get funding from other sources, or maybe they were not accustomed to applying for this type of fellowships. There is something that happened to you, kind of what was amazing, and it was like an anecdote that is in a way related to this type of project. One of the fellows said that when she received the email of confirmation of the fellowship, they thought it was a fraud because they never thought that could be a real possibility, that with their work could get some funding to keep on doing what they were doing without funding. So in that regard, mainly in Latin America, this allowed them to bring about changes within all the projects. Beyond the fellowship is the recognition of the project itself, not only because it's non-profit, because it's only voluntary work behind those projects. So regardless of those of that advocacy and activism, they have to work. And at the same time, many of them suffer from political persecution, violence by the police, so they welcome these projects with happiness. But at the same time, it was a new door opening, and I have several examples regarding to last year projects, and at the same time with a new project. In a way, still cannot believe that they have got the fellowships, and that gives us a lot of information about the things we are used to. I mean, the way we carry out projects here in Latin America, I mean, because we get the idea that there is money for work, but not to defend the territory. So you do it because you feel like fighting for that. But in general, there is no money related to those projects. That's why it's very interesting to see, well, the last year, and I guess this will happen this year, in terms of diversity of experiences, convictions, love, passion for the things they do. On the other hand, this open door, because the projects might grow. So we are convinced that we are supporting them, we are channels or as a bridge, as Anna has just said, we are providing support to projects that are fundamental, that are very important, and that is kind of so pleasing and so nice for all of us. It's a gift for us to have that role.
So I'd like to ask both of you for closing thoughts, starting with Anabella. Anything that I failed to ask you that you'd like to add? And any just last reflections that you'd like to close this wonderful conversation with? Anabella, what are your reflections?
Estaba pensando.
I'm thinking maybe to develop this sense of gratitude, this feeling of the importance of this project, and having met so many people, leading references for the two of us, but now I will speak about myself, the great opportunity that this project has given me, the contribution for my own identity, self-development. It has in a way allowed me, and it continues to allow me to talk about myself, to think about myself, to deal with my work, and that is highly valuable, mainly in terms of the spiritual and the emotional and healing elements, and this idea that we need to work from inside to transform the outside. There's a key word in my healing work, and it's in the collective work, which is coherence. And I guess that this project is coherent in the people behind that, in several aspects, in the values fosters, in their daily dynamics, in a way materialization of different things. And I feel hope. I get deeply moved. I mean, I am moved for being part of this project, the experiences we have had, and this opportunity that we had to create. And most of the things that happen here in Buenos Aires is related to the experience that we had when we connected to Commonweal. We were connected, we got a lot of information, and we used it to move forwards here. It was magical. I remember the spiral, the circle, and I have those images on my daily life. Mark, Susan, Andrea, Stanley, Nifemi, the people we are working with, you, Michael, Oren, all the work is moving. Is a pleasure to work with you all, and at the same time there is some kind of nourishment, and also to work with Sophie. Okay, I'm sorry, I got deeply moved, but it's like there are different ways to connect to create and what happened in Argentina when we got together here in Buenos Aires was the result of that support, of network, of trust, of this coherent paradigm that is trying to reduce violence. I'm sorry, but we are talking about ecosystem and the environment. I understand that, but what I feel at the end, or maybe at the very beginning, I guess that we are trying to analyze what we are going to do with violence, with our own violence, and to rethink from a different perspective, outside this binary word, without that limited political view that increases tension and not integration. I think this is a great space. This question of the space that enables us to do things, to develop things, to develop ourselves and expand our work. Well, even if we don't try to transform it all, but maybe from this coherent perspective to have clear and specific goals and here with us. And I think that it's something that can be felt outside. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Anabella. And I'm grateful that you are so moved by this. I'm deeply grateful. It is the work of the heart that moves us, that enables us to do the outer work. So I'm so grateful for your feeling moved by it. Sofia, your last thoughts and reflections on our partnership and our work together.
Bueno, por un lado,
On the one hand, I truly agree with Ana. We talked about this all the time. Something I forgot to mention is that the Ora project gets together with the foundation of the CAGE. There was synchronicity with the Tom, thanks to Tom, that is the creator's weaver of network. He has opened up this space in the perfect moment, the perfect timing to get in touch with this type of project, and at the same time, this synchronicity with Anna coordinating the project, meeting you. I think that we have always been interested in regional work, in the work in Latam, but never from this perspective and never in this role. So we are truly grateful for the opportunity to see like the map of our own territories from a different perspective, with a focus on enhances the work of the network, of the different networks and teams. So in that regard, this is a pleasure for me, and this is the fact that we are working together with the current situation of the country in particular, that we are working together, going in the same direction. And again, I think it's very important to understand the context. And again, we have some hope, happiness, the pleasure of getting together, something that we do not see on a daily basis, because the moment we're going through is highly complex. Is that we have a lot of massive sadness and concern. So the fact that we are developing a network with the global south, the global north, in Africa, Latin America, in India, there is so much power in the fact that we can expand this network simultaneously within this context. I think it's like huge. This is big. And when you are doing so, from the sensitive spiritual perspective, it's even more amazing. I don't want to take this for granted, because we are in a place where we work with legislative activism, in political domains, in very hard and hostile spaces. That the fact that in this type of spaces we can speak from the heart is not something that we see everywhere, and I think that's fundamental and is vital. And I think we can feel that in this shared conversation, that we are not being asked about this historical moment. We are taking 1.5 hours, and we are not talking about the evil measures taken by our president. I mean, I am so grateful for the fact that we have the opportunity to talk about these things, because it's not the only thing that can be shared from Argentina. So I'm so grateful that we can share this positive thing from our country. I'm truly grateful for that.
Thank you, Sofia. I just want to say a few final words myself. I mentioned to you that I was in Brazil on a Fulbright scholarship, and also reporting for the Washington Post in 1965, which was when the dictator Castelo Branco took over from a democratic government. And I also traveled through Argentina at the time and through Chile. And it was a very moving year of my life. And one of the things that I took away from it, and also my brother is married to a very extraordinary Mexican anthropologist. And one of the things I took away from all of this is the extraordinary depth of culture and art and literature and spiritual thought and civic action that is almost invisible to us in the United States because of our remarkably ignorant, biased consciousness that is formed by a media that really does not represent the public interest. And when I think of, in my own life, the influences that have touched me so deeply from my experiences of Latin American culture, I think of, and I'm sure it's controversial among different people, but what I think of what Pope Francis has done, coming from the very difficult history that he had in Argentina, and he feels himself that he was complicit in some terrible things. But what he has done for providing guidance for Catholics around the world is very extraordinary. And when I think of, the literary contributions of Borges and so many others who have been important to me, and when I think of my own work with the symbolic system called Enneagram, and the work of Oscar Ichazo and Claudio Naranjo and others who have been the great pioneers of one of the greatest depth psychologies available today, I find Enneagram to be a very profound system. And then I think of what I heard from you and others about the lithium triangle and how this is yet one more form of extractive exploitation, wave upon wave of extractive exploitative work. A judge just found the Chiquita banana brand guilty of causing, murders, and just the role of the United States in subverting democracies. So it's such a rich context of self-reflection. And then, we are in the same moment that you're in, as is true around the world, where democracy is deeply challenged. But at the very same time, the voices of freedom keep asserting themselves because you can't hold them down. There's a deep human hunger for justice and freedom. And so we see in India, in Turkey, and in Mexico and in other places, the forces for justice and freedom and gender equality asserting themselves again and again and again. So I just think, at least for me, that's a context, that's a context in which we all do our work. And we're all just part of an eternal stream of people around the world who are just trying to make the world safe for their children to grow up in, and, trying to make the world safe for a decent life. So I just feel a very deep connection to both of you and to AADAA and CAHE. And I'm very grateful to have had this time together. So thank you both.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Siento.
I feel just the same. I am truly grateful with you, with Commonweal team as well. Thank you very much, Michael. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Michael, Anna, and Sophie. Such beautiful work that you're doing. A great pleasure to have you here with us and to hear the stories of your lives and your work. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening to the New School at Commonweal. We'll see you next time.
Don't take it, 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 the river is a healer, the river is a sage, the river knows no end and the river feels no way.